Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm your co-host, Dr. Benway. Coach is around somewhere. You know, he gets lost in thought. So
yes, I get lost in thought
see.
because I have deep thoughts, and they're so deep, that I get lost in them. It takes me like a whole, I need to get mountain climbing gear to get out of the hole of my thoughts. But anyway, the point I'm going to be talking about. For those of you who don't know, we record these podcasts like anywhere typically between 4 and 10 days before they actually appear, just to have the flow of the show. And so we're going to be referencing some YouTube drama that for us is happening right now, but for you who are listening to this happened like way back in the dark ages of like a week and a half ago, okay? So anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that we're going to talk about this YouTube drama that's going on as a jumping off point to a very serious idea, which is this. Look, right now, we got Brittany Venti and Shoe on Head are having like a hissy fit. And, I don't know what the fuck that's all about. We got Tonka, who apparently has abandoned the internet blood sports, and we have Sargon apparently is getting into a fight with James Alsop and all the rest of it. And all of this drama and all this bullshit that's going on. And it seems to Benway and myself that all of this represents the same problem, that we're having these personal issues because there are no fucking ideas that are at stake. Because the right, the dissident right, is not putting forward positive ideas that we can all rally around and get behind and start proselytizing to the normies. I mean, that seems to me the problem right now. I mean, Benway, you agree with this or not?
By and large, yes. So I think the degree, one of the members on this YouTube neck of the woods who I actually like listening to from time to time, Millennial Woes, and what he said is really not anything kind of unique, but I think it's a kind of good manifestation of an attitude to have, which is, at any given point you should ask yourself, is this what you're doing or what you're engaged in good for the movement? In his case, a movement is something very specific, but broadly, it's also true. If you think that there is a political goal that you're trying to achieve, or you're trying to have some kind of shift to the culture, the world, the politics, what have you, well, then that means you have a goal, and you ask yourself, are you achieving it?
Yeah,
I think what I'm seeing here is
we don't have any goals. We don't have any fucking goals.
But I also think we're probably thinking we're in alignment with each other more than we really are, and perhaps we shouldn't have had that attitude to begin with.
Well, the thing that I'm bothered with is that right now in our neck of the woods, basically the argument is between ethnic nationalists and civic nationalists, and that seems to be the dichotomy that we're living under. And I think that's a false dichotomy, or not a useful dichotomy, because frankly, we don't want to be a part of the ethnic nationalists, and at the same time we see the flaws of the civic nationalists. So it's not really helping the cause of the dissident right. It's a dichotomy that is only privileging guys on the alt-right, because people who are ethnic nationalists, which the normies call racists, right? They gravitate to that, and fine, okay? But there are a lot of people who don't naturally gravitate towards the ethnic nationalist side, but see a lot of validity to it. Or on the flip side, they see a lot of flaws on the alternative, which is the civic nationalist. Because if you get right down to it, that's what we've been living under insofar as the whole notion of multiculturalism. It's basically civic nationalism. That's what multiculturalism is, if you look at it from a certain perspective, right? And so we're like, no, we don't really buy civic nationalism, but we're queasy about going into the ethnic nationalism. And also what happens if you're like a minority, like myself, I'm a spick. You got that guy T, who's a black guy. Minority people, or people who don't naturally fall into ethnic nationalism, they can't really embrace ethnic nationalism. And so it's just a weird dichotomy that is not proving to be useful. And it's leading to paralysis and bitch fighting, frankly.
Well, even what you're saying, I think, is honestly when we engage in those debates, that's even on the more robust side of the arguments we do engage in when we engage in them. I even think if that really was all the fight was over, I'd say we'd be in a lot better shape. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of the fights I'm seeing have nothing to do with that. I think there are a lot of personal animosities, bitching for the sake of bitching. Some people who want to make a show at being able to out articulate some other guy, and what they're articulating is kind of secondary to that
Yeah,
point.
internet blood
I,
sports. The whole internet blood sports has been corrosive to this whole sector of the community,
Well,
basically.
like in and of itself, like if if you're going to use internet blood sports to hash out some of those arguments on nationalism or civic versus ethnic nationalism, in and of itself, that would be fine. I just think some people are using it to hash out some other things that really are kind of irrelevant to any political thing. And you can take the attitude that I know others have taken, which is to say, I'm not really politically motivated. This is all just entertainment for me, and that could very well be the case. And I can't argue against that. That's what you want. That's what you're going to get. But for those of us who are participating in this and who do think of themselves as primarily politically motivated, I think Millennial Woes' statement is relevant for you guys, which is, do you think what you're doing is going to help or hinder your cause, and then you would adjust your actions accordingly? Like that was the question I would wanted to ask of Baked Alaska when he was doing his stuff. I said, and this was before he even fell into the traps. This was when he was just starting out his version of the blood sports. I would have asked him, it's like, well, are you getting closer to an ethno state through this?
Well, no,
My
I think
gut
that,
is to say no.
yeah, yeah, fucking A, yeah. I mean, like, okay, like in my own case, I've been thinking long and hard about this very podcast, as a matter of fact, okay? And for me, this podcast is very useful because it's more work. But what's happened because of this podcast is that I'm focusing more clearly on the line that I want to have insofar as my videos is concerned. So it is proving to be useful because, look, Coach Red Pill is fucking cringy. I've always said that from the very get-go when I came up with the name. But the point that I'm trying to do is to help younger guys figure out the world. And so, insofar as my video content. And so, because of this cringy-ass name, I've stayed focused on that. But at the same time, because I'm a man, I'm a human being that has more than just one interest in life. In the first season of my videos, I was doing stuff that was extraneous to that central goal of helping out younger guys figure out the world, right? And that sort of like polluted the video content that I did in the first season. Not polluted, perhaps that's too strong a word, but you see what I'm saying. It's sort of like, led me astray a little bit. Now, because of the podcast, I have an outlet for all the other shit that I want to talk about. The political stuff, the stuff about, what's going on in YouTube and the internet, what's going on in the wider world. I can talk about it here on the podcast and focus more clearly insofar as my content on videos. Now, in other words, yes, I look at what I'm doing in the podcast and it helps the overall goal, the overall mission. It seems to me that blood sports, which is wildly entertaining, nobody's saying it's not, I think that it has been catastrophic for this neck of the woods to iron out and figure out their ideas, because it doesn't become an issue of which is the best idea, which in the best world that's what the case would be. It's rather who can win at flinging shit at one another. That's what it becomes about. Okay, and I've discovered that I'm lousy at flinging shit at other people because I feel bad about it, and then when people start flinging shit at me, I get all riled up and my brain freezes up and I'm not able to articulate my ideas. And so I'm realizing that, fuck it, I'm not going to go into internet blood sport ever again. Not because I can't handle it on an ego level, but because I am naturally not very good at it. And so the effort to get good at it, what would be the point of that? But
Well, and my attitude towards this as well is I don't really see this as the problem with the proprietors of internet blood sports. I think that that they're operating under a very specific goal and niche. My attitude is, and it is even with all the participants, it's, as I said, it's specifically with those participants who have a political minded goal at heart,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, because you guys do have a vision of what you're trying to achieve, but I think that they're operating under the necessary rules of internet blood sports, which demands a certain type of engagement with other people. Namely, whoever can throw the best shit, has the best lines, their guys are going to win, because that's the goal. The goal is entertainment, and for those who want that, that's what they'll get. But if that isn't your primary goal, this is your side mission, to achieve the greater ends that you have, are you really, pushing harder on that? And I think in most instances, no. People who enter internet blood sports are do so at the cost of what they're doing elsewhere. Now, so other people can say, well, what you're doing elsewhere isn't really worthwhile, so accept that fate and move on. But I just don't think other people have really asked themselves that question. I think other people are simply operating as entertainers, but calling themselves political operators.
Yeah, yeah, I fully agree. I think that the political and the entertainment stuff has become confused, and and I realize that in my own case, I am political, a different kind of political, in the sense that I'm not so much interested in figuring out policy positions, but I'm more interested in a particular demographic, because I realize that that demographic is my demographic of who I was back in the day. Not now, but back in the day, I was a loser. I was a young guy who didn't have anything going for him. And I was really, really smart, but the brains were not really helping me at the time. And it took me a while to get my shit together. And I realized that, and the reason that that was the case was because I did not have paternal guidance. I did not have somebody who could tell me how to focus, what to do, how to get out of the rut that I was in. I had to get out of the rut all on my own. And it was very difficult. And there were a lot of mistakes that I made over the years, over the decades, because of this lack of paternal assistance. And I realized that my situation is far from unique. My situation is unique in the sense that I was fortunate enough to get out of that hole, more or less intact, and not have frittered away all of my promise. But I realize that there are a lot of young men who are in that position of they don't know what to do or how to go there, or they're lost, and they need somebody to help them. And so that's my political goal, if you will. And I realize that that group of young men can potentially become a very, very powerful political force. That's my thinking.
Well, sometimes when I listen to some people on the internet, blood sports, I ask myself, is what they're trying to achieve better achieved by simply picking their opponent, having a 5-minute physical bout where whoever gets knocked to the floor first, they were the winner. It's done. At that point, you can you've resolved your tension. You can move on, because sometimes it feels like that. There's an attempt to exorcise something at that basic level. There's an itch that or a bone to pick that just needs to get dealt with. And I feel like we've perhaps moved to the point where we think like verbal cattiness is the best way out of it. And I don't think it is. I think sometimes you take someone to a physical mat and just punch it out is going to resolve the matter more quickly for you. But and I think to your point, there's a lot of reasons why we are not in a position to really prioritize those kinds of things. When do you get physical? When do you get intellectual? When do you avoid a fight? When do you go into one? And what are you trying to achieve?
Well,
all of those goals are products of things that, among other things, you should have had with your father. Not you in particular, just in general, people should have with their father that they're not having. Another thing is like this is your father above and beyond your family father, your paterfamilias. I mean, the general society, right? There should be people, someone or someones who is helping, guide that decision. And we don't have that right now.
No, we don't. And we have it's really interesting because this corner of the internet that we're in is dominated by guys between the ages of, I don't know, there are a few teenagers, some of them even quite young, but mostly, college kids and post-college kids, and all of them are lost. They're clearly lost. They don't know what to do or where to go, and they're looking for that. They're looking for what to do, where to go, or else how to achieve it. They see the world around them and they're horrified by it, and so they latch on to a lot of people who are saying that. They're saying, yes, the world is fucking crazy. These people are fucking nuts. Referring, of course, to SJWs and shit like that, right? It's not that they're confirming their bias. That's not correct. It's more like they're confirming the reality that they are perceiving, which is really important, okay? Because, a quick anecdote. I used to have a dog. She passed away. A dog, I called her Claire. She was a great dog, a mutt, and I'd walk her, 3, 4, 5 times a day, depending. And the thing that happened was that, see, I'd walk her, and sometimes the dog, sometimes something would happen on the street. I mean, we're walking on the sidewalk, and the cars were passing, and maybe like a car backfired or something like that. And I'd be startled. The dog would be startled, right? But the dog would turn around and look at me, like look me in the eye, right after the event. And I realized what it was. It was basically the dog looking at me to confirm the reality that the dog was perceiving. Basically asking me, "Did you see that?" Basically, okay. And it's such a human thing. Something outrageous happens that sort of like disturbs our stability, and we turn around to the closest person next to us and say, "Did you see that?" I've mentioned that I was in a terrible earthquake in 2010, and I remember the first thing I looked for was somebody else to say, "Did you feel that?" And we talked about it. Of course, they felt it. We need to confirm the reality that we are perceiving, and we at YouTube are providing that for this demographic. But yet we are not doing anything else, and we're starting to get very, very comfortable with our demo, and just in a very real sense exploiting them, because ultimately the internet blood sports is all about the super chats, all about the money, the shekels that our demographic is throwing our way, and there has to be more to it. It can't be just that. Okay, we found our demo, now we're going to entertain them with this corrosive Ouroboros kind of piranha fights. It leads nowhere. It leads to self-annihilation. I think that we have to turn outward and do you see what I'm trying to say here?
Well, the other thought that's been in my head for a while now is that we're in our sort of fight club moment, even though we're not physically fighting anyone, which, as I said already, would have been already a better thing to focus our time on.
Yeah.
We are at that stage where we need to just get a lot of shit out of the system. But the thing is, we've been getting shit out of the system since, let's say, to oversimplify things, since Gamergate, which was around 2014.
No, I disagree. I disagree.
Well, let's say
Posit your position.
Yeah, let me tell you why you're wrong before you tell me why I'm wrong. Which is to say, at least since 2014, we've been saying, there is shit of which we will no longer put up with, at the very least. And we've been going through that for a while. We've in various manifestations, different bugaboos, and we really haven't changed much, right? In fact, a lot of people are just frankly getting bored. A lot of the things, for example, like, if you're going to put up another video that says, "Oh,
the wage gap is a myth," yeah.
Could you believe the last thing some SJW did? It's like, yes, I can believe it. I've seen the 500 other videos which preceded this. I know how they operate. The week in, I call someone out in particular. The week in stupid. Yeah, every week is stupid. Welcome to the fucking club. That kind of shit. Just stale stability has preceded itself. And honestly, I feel like, the blood sports is the latest is like an upping the ante of, like, almost like the Fight Club to the Fight Club, which is to say, hey, we've already gotten the stale anti SJW shit things. We need to get even more shit out of the system, but we're not yet proceeding to the next phase of the Fight Club book, which was what was it called? Operation
Mayhem.
Operation Mayhem, which was, for good or ill, was actually doing in IRL shit. Not a phrase that they used in the book, but pretty much what it was. They're trying to become a political movement using terrorism in their case. But needless to say, it was some sort of political activity. We're not even there yet, and in one way, shape, or form, I think a number of people in this crowd want to be there or should be there. Not necessarily through terrorism, mind you, but through some sort of political action. And I feel like we're stuck at the precipice of it. I mean, where there's some manifestations of trying to do it, but those manifestations haven't really worked well, have they? We talked at nauseum about the freedom of speech march and a couple other things. Those aren't going very well in terms of numbers.
No, they're catastrophes. I think that the March for Freedom was sort of like a step in that direction, but it was catastrophically mishandled, but what have you. Also, Kilroy was a little bit like that, but then it became like a money grab. Okay, but I actually realized as you outlined your point of view, I sort of like agree because there's Gamergate, right? Gamergate, oh, the press is lying to you, and then started like, see, they're lying to you about this and that and the other and the SJWs, and this is how our audience grew. Okay, our audience grew because we were telling them the things that they were seeing of the world around them. You know, the meeting somebody else's eye and talking about the craziness that you're experiencing and confirming that you're not alone and that you're not crazy, that this is really happening and that you're on the right side of history and these crazy SJW people are the ones who are fucked up, right? Okay, so we got that moment, and that moment's great. I think that the internet blood sport is like the Fight Club, okay? And the internet blood sport has had it hasn't been long. It started in fucking December. It really started in December. The Kunststream and the Kumite had been on before December, of course, but it had been very, very small. Okay, I mean, I'm talking, 50 people watching, the little money and the super chats. It had not become the big business that it has become, right? But so it exploded. It exploded with the Kraut situation, and then January, February, March, April. Now here we are in May. There was the apogee of this, and now May, as we're recording this, Tonka has disappeared. The backyard blood sports. There seems to be some catastrophic scandal going on over there. Thomas Ellington is in the middle of that. He's been sort of like drama whoring that whole situation. I mean, like basically that's his channel. It's all about drama, and something happened there with King of Pole and God knows who, and it's all kinds of blackmail and doxing and all kinds of shit. And also, by the way, degenerate shit. It's like faggots blackmailing each other with each other's doxes. I mean, it's all fucking creepy as fuck, if you ask me. Okay, I mean, it's just like the dregs of this whole environment. Maybe the blood sports, the internet blood sports, and this over dramatization and this, this drama on steroids kind of thing is a way to purge the system of all the undesirables. Because if you get right down to it, right, with internet blood sports, the people go for the throat, right, and they start looking for shit, really nasty shit, in people's backgrounds. That's how Medicare came across the whole recording of King of Pole, basically asking everybody and anyone for dick pics, that whole recording. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, see, maybe, like you're saying, it's a necessary step to purge everything and everyone before turning more political.
Well, I think one of two things is going to happen. Makes sense that there would only be one of these two things. Either it's going to get political, or we're going to just, turn off the spigot. We're done. Stick a fork in us, kind of thing. Because if we're not going to proceed to that, our goals either weren't very political to start with, and we're just going to continue what we're doing now, or we've just maybe even if we did have those political goals, we failed. Right. So if we don't start really going down that path, well, then this neck of the woods really isn't going to amount to much of a hill of beans for very long. Is my attitude, because you can't just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. Eventually, the audience is just going to get bored, because if you're doing it over and over again, you're admitting that it's to some degree an entertainment venue, and then you have to, and no entertainment venue lasts for 1,000 years, despite the soap operas telling you otherwise.
Yeah, and no, I completely agree with you. I think that there has to come a point where it's basically put up or shut up. That's basically the moment we're coming to. And I think the moment is fast approaching. I think that, and
I would stress also, I don't think everybody. This isn't like a thing I would say to everybody in this neck of the woods. I don't think the guys running the various blood sports streams really have to put up on this, because that's not their goal. I don't think guys like Medicare do, because that's not his goal either.
No, he's a troll.
He's more on.
He's a troll.
He's in. Yeah, exactly. Troll and entertainment. Politics isn't even his bag. But for guys like, I'll just put random names out of a hat. For guys like Sargon, for guys like Millennial Woes, for go through all the political guys that we're talking about. They're the ones who really are going to have to face this question. Some, I think.
Well, I think that Sargon and Millennial Woes, for instance, they're not going to make it in the next stage. Because I think it's Millennial Woes is going out there and giving speeches and stuff, right? But it's a self-selected group and it's an awfully small group. I think that Millennial Woes is smarter than Sargon insofar as his material is concerned, and I think that he's smarter. Period. Full stop. But the thing is, I think that Millennial Woes audience, the European ethno-nationalist, is smaller and smaller and smaller. I don't think that he has any shot of any kind of mainstream appeal. Sargon, I think that he thought he had a shot at mainstream appeal with the live versions of the Weekend Stupid that he's been doing that have gotten good responses, good money, and he needs the cash, right? Because of the apocalypse that hit him so hard. And so he's been going out there doing these public versions of the Weekend Stupid, and then he went out and did the Day for Freedom, right? And that was a fucking disaster. That proved that a big YouTube audience does not correlate or imply a big in real life audience. They should have had at least 20,000 people at that fucking rally. And they got what? 4,000, 5,000 maybe? I have not heard any estimate that goes beyond 5,000. So it proves that they don't have any mainstream appeal. They don't have real world appeal because they're not arguing for something. Okay? I'm sorry.
I do think Millennials is arguing for something, and I think if he's not going to, I think he actually does have more room for potential success. By that, I think he's the type of guy who has the potential to be for lack of a better term, to teach the teachers. I think he's going to be in a position to, basically take to those who do have better or are more prepared for, in real life stuff, in particular, advocating on a broader scale, and he can kind of be like the motivating guy who gives them the thoughts they need to kind of take it to the next level. But beyond that, you do need those guys who are going to take it to the next level, and I haven't seen them yet. Sargon, I put Sargon off to the side. I know what's kind of going on there now. I know there is no plans for real liberalism or whatever the fuck moniker he's decided to use now. Beyond what is already there, I think he's just a money grabber guy right now.
Oh, you think that it's all the money grab?
Right now, I'm pretty convinced it's all there is, because I think that's all there is left. I think the writing is on the wall that he's not offering anything that you cannot find in segments of any of the three major parties in the UK. So I don't know what his fucking deal is other than to grab money. And that I've reached the conclusion that's probably all there is left.
That for him, it's just money grab. Look, I mean, I watched that speech that he gave at the Day for Freedom, and it was, from an optics, from a political perspective, it was a catastrophe. This fat guy, neckbeard, with wraparound black sunglasses, standing on a podium that looked like a podium of the Politburo, when Stalin and his cronies were standing there and the military parade was passing by on May Day, right? It looked like that, and he's reading from his phone his speech. It seemed so detached from reality, and so just politically, it just looked horrible. And he looked like a fucking black shirt with the black short-sleeved shirt and the fucking black wraparound shades. He looked like a thug. He looked like an alt-right thug. I mean, tell me, am I right or wrong?
Well, I'm very happy to hear that the individualists have a uniform that they can wear and show that they are individualists.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very helpful to identify the group, the group of individuals.
No, I mean, it's just fucking absurd.
Well, I also think anytime this is really specific, but every time you're reading for a speech from a phone, even if you literally wrote the speech and you put it on your phone, there's something, like you said, it's distancing. It looks like you're distracted. You couldn't even be bothered, and you're reading like a Wikipedia page, as opposed to if you just printed your speech out. Yes. You're physically there in the moment. I know that's minor details, but that's the kind of details you pay attention to when you're actually trying to do shit like that. Yeah. And that's a sign to me that he's not doing that, or maybe he thinks he is, but he's really not.
I mean, I know exactly how I would have done it. I would have put the speakers in the middle of the crowd with just like an apple crate rather. To elevate him, maybe a foot over the rest, right? Not more. No fucking sunglasses. If he has to squint until he has his eyes shut, that's perfectly fine. A white dress shirt, rolled up sleeves, and white papers in his hand, blowing in the fucking wind as he's trying to read his fucking speech, and with fucking passion towards his audience, optically as a political, because it's political theater. Let's always forget political theater has existed with human beings and with politics since the beginning of fucking politics. You cannot have a real viable political movement without political theater. And what I'm describing out, sure, it's a little manipulative and all the rest of it, but it's part of politics. You got to be a fucking grown up about this shit, right? And you have to be fucking pragmatic. Okay, so the guys fucked it up. The Day for Freedom, it's a bust. And I agree with you that a lot of these guys are going to say, fuck it, I'm just in it for the shekels, and I'm not going to do any kind of in real world politicking. You agree that Sargon is going to make that maneuver, right?
Because I don't see where his in real world political actions lead other than to the wallet.
Yeah, I don't see it either, because he doesn't actually believe in anything.
Well, I will say I think he believes in something, but that something is simply to say, wouldn't it have been nice if we still lived in the 1990s or early 2000s?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it.
That's it.
Let's not kid ourselves as to what else is going on. It's just that the slightly left wing world that I remembered as a kid was so much better without the SJWs. So can't we just have that? Yeah. And my response is no, because they were there. You just didn't see them.
Yeah, exactly.
And two, the natural tendency of the politics you want are going to lead to a situation where they get recreated because it's a necessary precondition to their thinking. Let us not pretend otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay. So, yeah, actually, looking at it at the whole thing, we are seeing more efforts, deliberate efforts, to go out into the real world and have in real life interactions with people. But okay. My thinking is.
But here's the thing. That's the important point. There's a desire for this. People subconsciously even understand that they need to feel like they're doing something, that they're achieving something. Because I think it was one thing to say, to your point, do I have the recognition moment? Do I realize that I'm not alone in the universe in recognizing the discomfort I have with the world around me? Luckily for us, it turned out, yeah, a lot of people felt the same way, but we've been in that position now. Now we feel the same way, but we've locked ourselves in our house and are afraid to go outside. A number of people realize the next step is to feel the courage and confidence to go outside and say, up with this I will no longer put, and you are going to listen to me and concede to me now. People are ready to do that, but they're not succeeding in doing that, and I think they're getting distracted in ways that somewhat give the sense that they're doing that, but it's not really giving them that.
Let me rephrase what you're saying. You're saying that basically people are like in their mom's basement. They've read all the stuff. They know, okay, I'm not alone. Okay, now it's time for me to get outdoors because I have all of this information in my head. I have this information on the tip of my tongue. I can say this, I can fight, but I need somebody to help me out the door. Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, partly, and I don't even think it has to be limited to those who feel like they're actually literally stuck in their parents' basements. I think it could even be people like you and me who do have, the personal, life and business life doing pretty good or okay, but they realize that there are bigger issues that they need to start really thinking about or dealing with because they know they're going to be important down the road. And for whatever reason, we can't just get it moving to that step. Like I would love to be able to, vote for someone who thinks like I do, or run myself. But there are a variety of reasons why I don't feel like that's going to happen or would be a good idea. But I want it to be a good idea. I want these things to happen, and that's the trouble. That's the conundrum that you're in. Mm-hmm. Like I will never be able to run because in day one, I feel like the people would figure out, oh, he has too many unpopular opinions and they'll never be marketed and he's done. That, I know that will happen.
Right.
I think for others, I think it's, oh, well, I don't have the conviction enough to do it. Or maybe, I don't feel articulate enough. Or maybe, I don't know how to organize. All these things that you can learn.
Yeah.
how to do.
Yeah.
But we're afraid to learn how to do it.
Yeah, no, like in my own case, I know that I could never be any kind of a political leader because of like an actual on the ground political leader with a political office, because temperamentally I'm not suited for it. And there are too many chinks in my political armor that opponents could easily use to defeat me. So I can't win, and temperamentally I'm not suited for that kind of patient, meticulous, little by little approach that is necessary in politics, because politics is all about the little steps. It's not the big steps. It's not the giant leaps forward. Okay, it's always the little steps that get you ahead, and you have to be very steady and consistent, and not moody and mercurial as I am. And so that does not help in any kind of political career. But on the other hand, I recognize that I'm very good at generating ideas that people can latch onto and that can inspire them or move them towards a particular direction. Because it's not that I'm very original, it's that I'm able to articulate some of the ideas that other people are thinking, and that often is not. That ability to articulate is extremely important. Now, my thinking as of this time is that our audience is of a type. It's no accident that, I look at my metrics on YouTube, and 92% of my viewers are young men between the ages of 18 and 34. It's no accident at all, okay? Because I am speaking to them. They like my shit because I am speaking to them and helping them, and they understand me, because I'm really speaking to myself when I was young, okay, as I've said before in this very conversation. But what I find, how could I put it? We as a group, as a neck of the woods of the internet, we have to find a way to convert what we've got going for us, this huge audience, into actual political change. And the thing that happens, what's going on in my head is that we are so close to that. We have 500,000 people, roughly, in our neck of the woods. And that 500,000 people represents enormous energy and industry that could be applied politically to solve problems not just for this particular demographic, but for the wider society, and create a better society that, in the long run, would be beneficial to not only ourselves, but our progeny, which is what we want, right? I mean, that's what we want. We want to build a better, more just society that that will be beneficial to us, to our children and grandchildren, or else what the hell's the point? Okay, I mean, does this make any sense or not?
Yes, and I think I would use this as self-criticism as well. I think what is motivating our neck of the woods on several levels, not everyone, but I feel it, I sense that it's there, is this idea of fear. We're afraid of a variety of things, potentially. Fucking up. We're afraid that maybe not everybody would agree with us and we're going to embarrass ourselves. We're afraid we haven't articulated fully what we want to say. And so we find excuses to say that the real world political manifestation of what we want to achieve is unfeasible, or we can't do it, or what have you. The fear I have for that is that you tend to despair at that point, and you reinforce the situation which you don't want to be in. This is why I kind of, even
Do you
when we
think that
do get into the
that's really
when we
good?
do get into the black pilling, I worry about this because
Yeah.
I feel like we are committing the sin of despair, which is the worst sin to commit.
Yeah, yeah, because despair means that things cannot be changed, and it gives you the excuse for inaction. Do you think that certain major participants sort of like want to emphasize that despair so as to keep the stable income flowing?
Maybe. I think some people despair because they worry about their own personal ability to succeed, and thus they try to justify that, by saying it's worse than you could possibly imagine. Don't even bother. And what they're really saying is, I can't do it, and I don't want you to do it and prove to me that it was I who couldn't do it, as opposed to the system set up in such a way that no one could do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel that it's there, and I don't want to be that person who denies someone their opportunity to realize that potential because I worry about whether or not I could do it. You know what I mean? Like that's why I don't want to be the guy who always gives the black pills, even though I often do. That's the concern I have with kind of where we're at as well. And I think I would love to be in a better position to make people less afraid, but I don't know that I can consistently do that.
Yeah, but you recognize. I mean, let's go little by little. You recognize that potentially this neck of the woods, this 500,000 person market that we have, roughly, that it does have the potential to be a viable and very powerful political force. I mean, you agree with that, right?
Without reservation.
Yeah, because or else this entire conversation would be pointless. But you agree with me that potentially those 500,000, if they had an objective that was clear and easily and they were easily able to articulate that position, it could potentially be a political game changer, right?
Yes. Well, at the very least, it would, for those specific individuals and eventually radiating from them, achieve something much more than we have today.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so the issue becomes. Well, go ahead. So hang on. So the issue becomes how do we marshal that group? How do we marshal them and put them together to make it happen? That's the basic issue then.
Yes. Well, and I think that that's it. But I also think there's a degree to which there has to just be a true feeling of confidence and the willingness to act on it. Part of the reason I responded well to the Trump election, or at least the 2016 campaign, was it felt like for a moment there was a collective shared understanding that the outcome of this guy winning as opposed to the alternative was worth it, and it was simple and it was clear, and I think there was enough people above and beyond this group who felt similarly, or at least enough to say they'd support him, that they had the confidence to say, fuck this bitch. Maybe I'll actively tell friends about, this candidate who I wouldn't ordinarily talk politics with. I certainly was talking more politics in the office as well. Maybe I'll be more aggressive in public in kind of promoting this guy or whatnot. Maybe I'll actually put a campaign flyer shitter in. Maybe I'll make the memes that really push, annoy the fuck out of other people and get other people confident enough to say, yeah, I'll vote for this motherfucker. That, all of those stuff may sound trivial, but it was a manifestation of the confidence that we lack now. Where an uncertainty is kind of permeating now. And you kind of articulated one manifestation of it, which is we can't confidently say whether ethno-nationalism or civic nationalism is the right approach. I mean, the truth of the matter is that's a manifestation of a broad uncertainty. Yes, individuals are somewhat certain in their preference of one over the other, but broadly, collectively, as a force to be reckoned with, the jury's out, and because the jury's out, we lack that confidence and we're not really moving on anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lack of confidence. It's that my thinking has always been when you don't know where you're going or what you're doing, then that's when the lack of confidence seeps in. Okay? And because there's nothing more confidence building than having a clear objective. You and I are watching the Vietnam documentary by Ken Burns, right, called unoriginally enough Vietnam. And it's 18 hours, and we're going to get through it, and we're going to do a couple of podcasts about it. But the thing that I want to emphasize is that, see, the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, they knew exactly what the fuck they were doing. And they were willing to withstand any hardship to get what they wanted because the goal was so simple. They wanted one Vietnam, a unified Vietnam under their regime. It didn't even matter what the regime was. They could have been fucking anarcho-capitalists, okay, rather than totalitarian communists. But they still would have fought with the same energy, the same determination, the same grit, because they had a clear goal. When a man has a clear goal, he's unstoppable, and nothing can defeat him. The North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, they defeated the Americans. There's no other way to look at it because they were willing to you know, pay any price, bear any burden. Okay, to quote JFK, and flip him on his head. They were willing to go all the way because they had a clear line. And what we need is a clear line. And we don't have it at this time. We don't have a clear line that can unify all of us and pursue a clear political goal that can not just benefit ourselves, but our society as a whole and our progeny.
What I worry about also the arguments that we're having, and it isn't even in sometimes the arguments per se that worry me. It's the motivation behind the arguments. I think when I hear, Sargon has his position and maybe JF has another position, or Millennial Wells has another, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes I get the feeling where I wonder, are the people articulating these arguments, are they making these positions because they want to be quote unquote objectively right? Like, oh, in an autistic way, like when I looked at all the details from a technical standpoint, this particular brand of civic nationalism was the right answer, objectively speaking? Or do they want to find the right enough answer that will motivate people successfully? I think the former is more of what you're seeing right now. People would rather be right than win.
I agree.
Yeah, and that's the problem, because what that really manifests is that no one really wants to be a leader. They want to be seen as a leader, maybe, but they want to be seen as
winning
right,
the argument.
they want to be seen as smart or whatever. Yeah, they want to win an argument. You're right.
Yeah, they want to win the argument. And your prescription, your diagnosis of the problem is absolutely correct, because I know all of these participants personally. They are more interested in being right than winning. They would actually prefer to have a smaller audience and be right than to win. Which is just fucking crazy if you think about it. But it's look, all of these people criticize Sargon and JF and all the other people here in this neck of the woods of the internet as being pseudo-intellectuals. And in a way that they're absolutely right. They are pseudo-intellectuals in the sense that they are not actual intellectual. Well, in the case of JF, he actually is a PhD, and ditto with Aidan Paladin. But what they're interested in is the respectability of academia, the intellectual responsibility. They want to be considered smart. Look, keep in mind, you and I both have an experience with academics, and the thing that they are touchiest about is how smart they are. They are, you can touch them on anything. Their argument is wrong, or this or that or the other, but you say, oh, that's not very smart, and their hackles rise because they want to be considered smart, because the whole basis of their self-worth is determined by them being considered smart. If they're not considered smart, then they've got nothing else going for them, right? And they start to panic. They start to freak the fuck out, right? Now, I think that...
Yes, I do think that's the... Whenever your job, right? This is why I say fundamentally having something to do, a job, even if the job is not necessarily a salary thing, that job provides, in some sense, meaning to your life, in some sense, manifestations of who you are. You could take it in a different kind of cut. If all you're really doing is being, your argument, if argumentation is all that you're doing and someone criticizes that, you take it more personally than you would if, like, for me, it's a side gig. Oh, that argument's stupid. Like, I may disagree with you. I may think you're an asshole, but this is a side gig of what I do. I don't really give a shit whether you think I'm smart on that front or not. There are other ways that I know keep me busy, occupied, and fruitful.
No. Your sense of self-worth is not defined by it.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people here, that's really the game, right? It's their main focus.
And also, you got to keep in mind, like people like Sargon, frankly, before YouTube, he was a failure in his life. He was just getting nowhere, he did like a year in computer programming, and that was pretty much it. He was just like basically a video game player. That was it, right? And he found success. And the thing is, people like that who are basically intelligent but have been failures, they hold on to their notion that, well, at least I'm smart. So you better not question my brains because I'm smart. I'm smarter than you. Okay? smarter than you, because their sense of self-worth is determined by their being brains, because they've got nothing else going for it, in my own case, like when I was young, yeah, I had nothing going for me, and so I latched on to being smart as my sense of worth and the absolute metric by which people could be measured. Oh, he's smart, he's dumb, right? As I got older and I had more success in different aspects of my life, I started letting go of needing to be the smartest guy in the room. And by this time, I could give a shit, because I've been in rooms, so many rooms, where some other guy was smarter than me, and yet I won, right?
Well, that's the thing. And people think, because I've seen this also in business settings a lot, when people hear that, oh, it's not necessarily the smartest guy in the room that wins. What people are thinking is, oh, that means because you lied, cheated, and steal, or you did something unethical. No, that's not really the case. What often happens with the smartest guys in the room, and sometimes I know this because, when I was more, junior and green, I was this thing. Being the smartest person sometimes leads to, amongst other things, analysis paralysis, or prevents you from making a decision because you know so much that you question whether you only see the challenges and a decision will bring, as opposed to, hey, net this is the right decision for X, Y, and Z reasons. Yeah. So you're afraid to actually make that call, whereas someone else who just understands the gist of it, can say, no, we're going to do this decision. And oftentimes 90% of businesses just doing things like that, making those decisions. So the degree to which you are the smartest person of a room doesn't necessarily mean that you will be the most successful in the room. And that's not to say there's something terribly stupid about you at the end of it. No, it just simply means that there are other factors that you're not considering. And, intelligence is one piece of the puzzle. Or let me rephrase that. Smarts or knowledge, or, tactical knowledge, is one piece of the puzzle. There's other elements of intelligence at play here that you get from experience, and you don't necessarily have to be the highest quote unquote IQ person to be able to be the best person in that process. I'm probably losing my articulation, but I think you and I are understanding the same thing.
Yeah. Because, like, look, the thing, it sort of like goes in streaks. Like, how can I put it? A simple example. Okay. Suppose that, John is a genius. John the genius. He's got an IQ of 170 points, right? And Marvin is a moron. He's got IQ of, 80, right? And there are two doors, right? And one is a treasure trove, and the other is a tiger, a man-hungry tiger who's going to devour whoever opens it, right? And, Marvin the moron opens the right door and he gets the treasure. And John the genius, in the same circumstances, opens the wrong door and he gets eaten, okay? Intelligence didn't play much of a role, okay? Or it could be, just to strip away the notion of chance. It could be that somebody not so smart notices something that the smart guy doesn't notice or doesn't pay attention to, because he's noticing something more complex than the very simple thing that's going on. And so the genius makes the wrong decision and the moron makes the right decision, okay? There's this joke I heard. It's a bad joke, but it's indicative. There were these two guys, again, John and Marvin. John the genius, Marvin the moron, right? And they went to high school together, and Marvin the moron never did well in school, and John the genius helped him out and all the rest of them. And they were friends because, Marvin was so much stupider than John that he didn't feel him as a threat. And so John went to Harvard and got a PhD, but, the things being as they are, he's in teaching in a community college, and he's making like 30 grand a year, right? And, one day he's driving his little 10-year-old little Hyundai, right? And he crashes into a Rolls Royce driven by a, liveried chauffeur. And, the guy in the back of the Rolls Royce pops out, and it's Marvin the moron. And he's a rich man. And John the genius says, Jesus, I crashed into your car. And Marvin says, forget about it. Don't worry about it. Let's go and have a drink, And they go and have a drink, and Marvin says, what do you do? And John explains that he's got a shitty life, right? And Marvin says, well, I'm a rich guy. And it was all because of you, he says to John the genius. And John the genius says, how was it all for me? Oh, because you see, remember that percentages stuff that you taught me, right? So I have like a toy company. And I started by selling these little toys that cost $1 each. But see, because of percentages, I learned from you. that if I raised my prices by 2%, I'd become rich. So what I did is I buy this thing for $1 and I sell it for 3. See? And that's how I just raise it by 2% and I'm rich, right? And of course, it's a stupid joke, but indicative, see? It's how can I put it? And so everybody here, we've gone way astray from what the fuck we were talking about, but I think that actually might be good.
I actually don't think we're that far astray. I think we're still very much on topic.
Yeah, well, the point I'm trying to make, see, is that a lot of times the dumb guy gets farther than the smart guy. And it has nothing to do with cheating or stealing or anything like that, which is what a lot of smart guys say. Because a lot of smart guys cannot believe that somebody not as smart as them can get ahead. And that's the thing. They can, easily, okay? Because the smart guy is blind to certain realities that the dumb guy might realize. He might not be able to articulate it, but, go ahead.
Well, it's like I see it every day in my job. Right?
Okay.
I mean, by that, and like I said, there's sometimes, because what often happens, because I think the smart guys, people often, frankly, in our neck of the woods, they will tend to be in the jobs that are very tactical, things that you need to have a lot of knowledge capacity to figure out. Sometimes engineering, sometimes like, the software design, various finance things, whatnot. But the thing is, those are parts of what you're selling. They're not the whole. Often the things that you need to know is like the personality and of dealing with people, the ability to kind of cut through the meaning of what someone's saying and figure out if what they're bullshit artists or not. Things that intelligence sort of helps with, but doesn't entirely help.
Yeah.
With. There are very key roles that simple regurgitation of facts will not be sufficient to resolve. And you have to realize that there are other skill sets at play that pure knowledge sometimes pales in comparison to.
Yeah.
So you just have to kind of accept that and kind of move on. And I think in our neck of the woods, by virtue of, I'm willing to bet we have a lot of introverted types. I'm willing to bet we have a lot of people in those very tactical jobs. There is more to the success of any business than just than our type of thinking, and that's also at play in politics. We have to realize you are going to need the guy who knows marketing. Sometimes you are going to need the gal who can sweat out like we talked about Elon Musk. He has to sweat out that analyst meeting and know how to say the right things to put confidence in investors' minds. These things matter in a very material way. And you cannot just say, I'm smarter than you and I'm going to win, because invariably the world I can guarantee you, will reject you.
Yes.
Sometimes with good cause.
Yes.
I would rephrase that, often with good cause.
Yeah, I agree. Look, my thinking is that, for example, one of the things that springs to mind in what you were saying just now that just stuck to my head, who was the fucking asshole who thought it was a good idea to shit all over the traditional women who are trying to, proselytize the cause? Who were those fucking assholes? Because those fucking assholes should be put up against the wall. Because
I can tell you who they were right now. They were the mgtows, and it was in particular, what's his face, who the former Muslim, who I think is going to basically become a reborn Muslim and lead. What's his name? I keep forgetting it. Rush. We talked about it. Yeah, Rushvi. We talked about it. I said I'm willing to bet money on the table. Rushvi will suddenly turn around and be like a Muslim convert again, and will lead a mass conversion of mgtows. I feel it coming in my bones. And Rush, I think, whether he started it or not, was one of the guys really pushing this. These trad thoughts and whatnot. They're an anathema to the movement.
So if that's a really shrewd guess. I don't recall us talking about this. We very well might have, and it just slipped my mind. Alzheimer's, all that. I'm old.
This was a long time. This was before This was way back in the day.
Okay, look. That notion that Rush V goes full Muslim. Well, he says that he is a Muslim still. He doesn't. He's not. Denouncing his own religion. I think he's still Muslim, and your idea that he might double down on it, that's actually fucking interesting. Please expand on the Roosh issue that you just discussed.
Right. So I know whether he started it or not. I know Roosh has the anti-trad thought argument that says, "Hey, these bitches are just going to fuck up, something that should be inherently run and managed by men."
Right.
And that their proselytizing is bullshit or whatever.
Right.
I think if you really think of what the mgtow attitude is, that men going their own way or whatever the fuck the acronym is, they're because they have a very dim view at the ability to women to make good decisions on their own in this particular society.
Mm-hmm.
What are they going to be inclined to like or prefer? And I think the structured notion of male and female relationships in the Islamic world, plus the idea that women are to a certain degree a commodity that can be arranged, bought, and sold,
Yeah.
to put it crudely, and can be offered to you for outside of your need to interact with said women,
Yep.
is going to be very appealing. And like I said, the fact that Rush has that background and probably still has an attitude like that, I can easily seeing him make a very simple pitch to the mgtow community. It says, go to convert to Islam. It's actually, now that I've had a chance to sit and think about it, as our dreams come true. And that's where I see it going.
We talked about the novel Submission back in the day, and Submission is basically that the French wind up having an Islamic government, and they start to convert en masse. The intelligentsia, the traditional French intellectuals start to convert en masse. The leftists, and commoditizing women and all the rest of it. What you're arguing is really fucking shrewd, and I see no flaw in the argument. On the contrary, I think it would be an incredibly appealing pitch to MGTOW. I think that the MGTOWs would flock to it, because bottom line, and I've never had a problem saying this, that I think that MGTOW in general, I am sympathetic to a lot of their criticisms, but I'm realizing that a lot of people who are hardcore MGTOW, at the end of the day, are anti-women. They really are misogynist. And I don't say that casually, because I despise having to use some of the language of the left. But the MGTOW are misogynist. They don't like women. They're afraid of women. They have hang-ups with women. Whatever the hang-ups are, the reasons behind those hang-ups, I could give a shit. The fact of the matter is that they don't like women. They don't want them around in their lives. Right. They understand that they are necessary, if only for procreation and for sexual satisfaction. But they don't like women. Which is the exact opposite case of myself. I find women infinitely fascinating and amusing and interesting, precisely because I can't predict them. I can predict men, but I can't predict women, which is why they're fun.
That's a gigantic gulf, which I think people looking outside at this will miss. Which is to say, there is a cavernous difference between those who think that there are traditional gendered roles for women, and that those traditional gendered roles do have value, from those who see women as things that they wish you could just pack up when you're done.
Yes.
Slide under the bed or in the closet.
Exactly.
And move on.
Exactly right. Yeah, because I'm all in favor of traditional gender roles. And I think that it ultimately leads to greater happiness of both sexes. When women are women and men are men, and they are carrying out their gender identity, for lack of a better terminology, right? But you're right, MGTOW, yeah, sure. It's easy to think that MGTOW are in the same boat as traditionalists, but they're not. MGTOW don't like women. Traditionalists like women, but want them to be in their gender roles because they think that both sexes would be happier in the long run and the short run.
Yes. And I think
this is the first time I've articulated this difference between us and MGTOW, because I reject MGTOW. There's something about them that I've always just thought was just wrong, and I did a piece saying be MGTOW for a period of your life, but even that I felt uncomfortable, and I was not able to quite figure out why. But I didn't pay that much attention to it. But in this conversation, I'm realizing you're absolutely right that Roosh will turn to Islam, and that the MGTOW just don't like women. Well, I feel like my brain is expanding. Thank you.
So I got the noggin jogging on this one. So this
Hmm.
is a successful episode. So there you go.
Yeah.
Already something. Now, so one could maybe turn this around at me and said, "Oh, see, you're picking a fight with mgtow when you should be kind of unifying with them." I would say, well, I'm
No.
just at this point, I'm just simply articulating why I see there's a difference. Um,
And
but
I think that actually it's smart to make this distinction, because I think there are a lot of men in MGTOW who confuse the fact that their lack of sexual success, and they figure, well, I'm just shitty at it, so maybe MGTOW would be the best, but they want to be with women. I think that
yes.
there's a large segment of the MGTOW that they like women, they just don't know how to get them, and so they figure, well, I'll just be MGTOW. Whereas there's a hardcore of MGTOW that hate women, that they really are misogynist. And I hate to use that fucking word, but that seems to me the issue, right?
I think so. Yeah. And so I'm trying to figure out a best way to kind of tie it back in to the issue at hand. My attitude is, it's good to clarify thoughts, and it's good to help articulate what really the productive vision you want to go to
Yeah,
will be,
yeah,
right? And that's partly why I wanted to discuss the mgtow thing, and also I think you had brought up just the sheer tactical insanity of saying, oh, this tool we have of appealing women, articulating the traditional attitudes. Yeah, we're going to shit on that because of personal hangups,
yeah,
because of bad tactical reasons, whatnot. Shit like that actually tactically damages any kind of political attitude. And I'm not saying anything that hasn't already been said already. I think I know for a fact Millennial Walls, who I for some reason keep bringing up in this episode, mentioned that explicitly. Because the reason I bring him up is because I know when I watch his videos, he actually is conscientiously being conscious of what the political goals should or should not be. Whether he's perfect at articulating that, that's different. But I think he actually has that goal in mind and tries to operate accordingly. So that's to his credit, and that's kind of what I would suggest other people would probably be fruitful thinking about. I think if you're still, if you're here for the laughs and the yucks, nothing I say is going to change that.
yeah.
So you can probably stop listening at a certain point. But for those who want to do a little more, I mean, that's the kind of thinking you have to adopt, and I want to see more of it.
Yeah, because my ambition is for our neck of the woods to become politically motivated and aim for goals that I can get behind. Principally, decentralization of our society. Breaking down those nuclei of power, those little nodes that are all around the body politic like fucking cancer. Because I truly look at them as cancerous. The over centralization of power in Washington, the use of information technology to control people as opposed to bringing them together, all of that. I'm just so against it in the economy, in every sector of the economy. I just want decentralization. I want to feel that in a locality, in a small town, people feel that they actually have control of their lives and they're not being dictated to by some on high power thousands of miles away, which is the case today. That's why people feel so miserable. That's why there's an opioid epidemic, because people feel that they have no control over their lives. So they want to check out. They check out with opioids, they check out with pornography, they check out with video games. There are a whole host of different drugs that we are using as a society to check out and ignore and palliate the feelings of powerlessness. So there are two approaches. Either keep on taking the drugs, be it porn or opioids or video games or just apathy. Keep on taking the drugs or do something about it. And I prefer to do something about it. It just feels more fulfilling. I mean, I don't want to be staring at a TV mindlessly nodding along while I eat Doritos all day long. Fuck that, you know?
And look, this is, I think, related to the appeal of guys like Jordan Peterson, which I know a lot of people in the more harder right side, of which I would even include myself, have some material criticisms of him. And I actually think they're real.
I think the criticisms tend to be more of envy, but we'll get to that some
well,
other episode.
I actually I think his flat out dismissal of certain ethnic questions are just beyond the pale. But the core idea of what he says, like, look, you actually have things you can do and you should be doing, and you should do them now, is appealing, and it's rightly appealing, because that's true, right? I mean, you should be doing, even if it's something as minor as, to use a cliche phrase, clean your room. That is something you can actually do that will have some sort of net benefit. So
Empowering
that
people, again, hating to use that word, but it's the only one I can think of. Empowering people, empowering young men.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, again, that there's the will for this is there, and I see it all over the place in things that are becoming more and more popular and successful now. So not just in things like Jordan Peterson, but this is going to sound corny and crazy, but I honestly see it in spades when I watched it. I even told you about it, like the latest, hit YouTube TV show, the Cobra Kai, which was the
Yeah,
reboot
of the
of the
Karate Kid.
Karate Kid. It's essentially a show about trying to find that father figure who's able to instill the ability to be confident, actually stick up for yourself in the real world. Ironically enough, the villain from the original show is the hero in the new show,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The Cobra Kai attitude of strike first, strike hard, no mercy. The general idea that no, go, rather than be, and this is what you're going to get through the show, is that all of the kids and the heroes of the Cobra Kai world are people who were dorks, who were made fun of, who felt that they had no control over the situation in the world. Basically, were taught to have the confidence. No, you can throw a fucking fist back at the guy, and I will show you how to do that. Gives them that confidence. There's a literal and physical metamorphosis that goes on in these characters along the lines of kind of what I would say we're trying to articulate in this show, in this particular podcast episode, down to the very point that, it's also mediated by a father figure. And it's what the show really articulates. And I think also what we're trying to articulate is that relationship, that desire for order, that desire to know what to do and to be guided to a point where you have that confidence. That relationship will create itself in its absence. So, like, even if you have no father figure, you will try to find one.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening now is, like it or not, a lot of the guys in our neck of the woods are playing that role, whether they know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing it in such a way as to be counterproductive to people who are open recipients of needing it. They, and to know what to do with their lives. And that is a responsibility you should not be taking lightly. You should actually be doing something fucking good about it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I really went on a tangent on
No,
that
no,
one,
no.
but I
It's
do
perfectly
think it's
fine.
related.
Yes, I think it's fatherlessness. I think a lot of, it's fatherlessness. I keep thinking of Fight Club, which is a flop as a movie at the time. It did not do the numbers it should have done. And I think that as a movie, the second half sort of like falls apart. It just becomes ridiculous. But it was, how could I put it? I look at black inner city youths gravitating towards gangs because they don't have fathers. I look at young men getting lost to video games and pornography because they don't have a father. They don't know how to confront society. And so they fall back on whatever tools will either give them some sort of social sustenance, as it were, gangs among black inner city youths, or give them a way to escape the problems, pornography and video games, for the suburbanite kids, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all the same thing. And you look also at people in our socioeconomic level, if you will, who went to the quote unquote good schools, who are so fucking compliant. We wind up excusing the drunk daddy, i.e., the corporation, because he's the only daddy we got. I mean,
Yeah.
think of the fact that we who are working in investment banks and big consulting firms who went to name brand schools, which means that we are hyper compliant, because the only way to get into an Ivy League school or a top tier school, you have to jump through a whole fucking set of hoops to get into them. I was lucky because when I applied, I was so out of the loop insofar as that whole thing. Because, by the way, I went to college when I was 22. And I'd done a whole bunch of things. I taught English in Latin America. I traveled around. I'd done all sorts of crap. I'd even written a novel, which I included in my applications, by the way. And a couple of people actually read the fucking thing. They actually submitted it to the Spanish department, and they were like, "Whoa, this is a pretty good book." It was pretty goddamn funny. And so that's why I was able to get into a lot of colleges, because I was like the really weird one, right? But I had the good
Right.
test scores. But all the other students that I met, they'd all done the extracurriculars, the right extracurriculars. They'd all done the lefty shit. They'd all been good boys, right? Good boys, GUDBOI, right? Good boys, every single one of them, right? And so they wind up going to work for corporations, and what do? They go along with any kind of immorality because they don't want to be outside of the group, because they don't have any other group, because they don't have any kind of independence, because they didn't have a man, a father, who could instill in them the idea of moral independence, of being able to independently say, this is right and this is wrong. And I'm not going to go along with something that's wrong, even if it costs me, even if it costs me a lot. How many guys do you know in consulting and in the business world, in investment banks, they know the horrible things that they're doing, and yet they just go along because, oh, my career, but ultimately it's because they want to please the only daddy that they know, which is this environment. Does this make any sense to you?
So typically, how that manifests itself is they are extremely good rationalizers.
Yes. Yes. Exceptionally good rationalizers.
And I'm not even kidding. Like, I've never heard as much arguments about lack of concern for these things as I have when I was working in these various spaces. Like, you can come up with some incredible fucking stories about how you are okay to be doing the thing you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Or vice versa, not doing the thing you should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's a fatherless generation. And it's a fatherless generation that, because they are fatherless, they don't have any goals. They don't even know how to articulate goals. And of course, on the other hand, our consumeristic society, which is all about palliating any need, that's basically mothering. It's an over-mothering of a generation. And that's why Fight Club talks to this generation. It was just 20 years ahead of its time, I guess. Because I wonder now, if Fight Club came out now, I think it would have been a huge success.
Yeah, I mean, well, as per usual with these things that are ahead of their times, they ironically enough become the catalyst or the means by which the world which precedes them becomes articulated.
Yeah.
So by that, I mean, Fight Club needed to happen in 1999 as a movie in order for the aughts and this current year to be articulated the way it has, because Fight Club is a touch point of reference that you can use to articulate what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Just as like 1984, it didn't do much of a splash in 48, I believe, when it came out, but it certainly has become much bigger over the decades. Okay.
Precisely.
So we've gone about an hour and a quarter on this conversation. Bottom line, I guess the conclusion, to come to a conclusion in this podcast at least, is that it seems to me that our YouTube community, the big players, the big hitters in YouTube, they are able to bring about a particular audience, but they don't know what to do with that audience. And at this point in time, the leaders of it seem to be hell-bent on milking money out of this audience, as opposed to making any kind of political move, even though they make feints in that direction. Would that be a fair assessment of the situation we're in right now?
On the political leader side, I think that's very much true. And I think people also have a tendency of confusing non-political leaders with political leaders, and thus expecting things of one that shouldn't be expected of, or misinterpreting things. For example, I don't think any of the blood sports guys are or want to be political leaders, and you shouldn't judge them that way. But I think people do think that, like the fucking Southern Poverty Law Center calling Andy Worski some sort of alt-right figurehead. I mean, that's just a sign they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, right? But that's also true on our side. I mean, you can't hold Andy or any of the other guys to that kind of standard either, because you're just not understanding their goals. They know their goals very clearly. They're operating on them. We who are more politically minded should just be mindful of that you have slightly different goals, and you should, if you should hold yourself to different standards of what success is.
Yeah. Okay, so on that note, we're going to call it a podcast. And this is Coach Red Pill. This has been the Coach and Benway podcast. Dr. Benway, you want to take us out?
Join a political movement. What can I say?
No, it's more than that. It's not that join a political movement. I think that a real political movement can come out of our neck of the woods. And I think it's just a matter of time. And it's just a matter of finding the right goals, because I think that that's the problem. Right now, we don't have any goals, but once we settle on the goals, then it'll come together.
Find a political goal.
Find a political goal. Okay, with that, this has been Dr. Benway and Coach Red Pill. Thank you very much, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.